Well, hello and welcome to the CNBC TV18 eBix Cash studio. I'm Ashmit Kumar. Now, the Supreme Court has expressed its disappointment at the government's reluctance to file an affidavit clarifying whether or not Israeli spyware Pegasus was indeed used to snoop on eminent politicians, journalists, legal professions, as well as activists. Now, the Apex Court, while accusing the center of beating around the bush, has reserved its orders on the interim orders, rather. The government argued that the issue involves aspects of national security and hence cannot be discussed in the public domain. Solicitor General Tushar Mehta said that they were ready and willing to let the government constitute expert committee that will look into the matter. The centre also maintained that there was no unlawful interception into the privacy of citizens. Meanwhile, petitioners in the matter who are seeking investigation into the alleged illegal use of Pegasus accuse the government of asking the court to shut its eyes. Senior Supreme Court advocate Sanjay Hegde joins us now to throw more light on the subject. We also have with us the president of the Supreme Court Bar Association, Mr. Vikas Singh, joining us for more insight and perspective. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Appreciate you joining us. Mr. Vikas Singh, if I may come to you. Here again, there was a very clear instance last week when the centre, this matter had come up. The centre, represented by the Solicitor General, had asked for more time. That additional time was granted, but despite the additional time having been allowed, no further clarity emerging. In fact, we only saw the Solicitor General raising the bogey of national security and saying once again that, look, this is a matter that affects the national security, that we cannot be touching upon that subject and that this cannot be discussed in the public domain and certainly not in the top court. What is your reading of this statement coming in from the centre, Mr. Singh?
Well, according to me, if you see three facts, in seriatim. So first is the notification by the Ministry of Home Affairs dated 20th of December 2018, where it authorized 10 organizations, which is the Intelligence Bureau, the Narcotics Control Bureau, the Enforcement Directorate, the CBI, the DRI, the National NIA, the Cabinet Secretariat, the Directorate of Signal Intelligence, and the Commissioner of Police, Delhi. Now, these 10 organizations were given the power, and the language used in the notification is that they will have the power to, will be able to intercept any monitoring and decryption of any information generated, transmitted, or received. So this authority they already had. Now, the second point you have to notice is that the minister made a statement in Parliament that whatever we have done is as per law. And the third statement in the Supreme Court is again relying upon what the minister said in the Parliament, that whatever has been done, whatever interception has been done, the rule of law has been maintained. Now, if you read these three together, it is clear that the government has used Pegasus. There is an admission of using Pegasus. It further says that we have used it, but it is an authorized user, not an unauthorized user. So accordingly, the Supreme Court should not look into it. Now, what is disturbing is that the leaks that have happened in the media are of activists, of eminent people, of journalists, of lawyers, of even the present Commissioner of Police being a person who was being looked at by the Pegasus software. Now, are these people all involved in terrorism? Because that's the only ground on which Pegasus had agreed to provide this software only to sovereign nations and not to individuals or to corporations, that it will be done for only to control terrorism and not for any other local snooping. Sure. So if these people are, if they are threatened with, if they can be considered to be a threat to national security, and that is why you don't want to disclose, then there is something very, very serious which the court has to look into. And according to me, an interim order should be passed, either validating the appointment of the commission appointed by the West Bengal government, or appointing a commission by itself, giving full powers to look into everything and ensure that the entire saga is unfolded and the people come to know how and under what circumstances and for what purpose Pegasus was used. Because there are also instances, or there are also cases of the financial market also being snooped in by Pegasus, like senior officers of the LIC who are in charge of,
Mr. Singh.
investing in the markets. And that kind of information really can affect the financial market
Right,
in a
Mr.
very
Singh.
big way, and it is actually insider trading in some way. So, according to me, now it has become very serious, and the central government, by its silence, has admitted having used Pegasus, and this should not be taken lightly, and the court should take it to its logical end.
Right, Mr. Singh. We're not very certain about the admission. Again, nothing emerging from the government yet. But as Mr. Vikas Singh was pointing out, that this does appear to be a very severe case that requires some attention, some judicial intervention at this stage. Mr. Hegde, let me come to you, and this I'll borrow from some of the interesting observations that were made. The affidavit, the only thing that has emerged from the centre is a two-page affidavit, and with that, the annexure of the speech that was given by the IT minister before the parliament. And in that, the CJI, in fact, picks out a few issues. He says that even as per the IT minister, he admits that there is need for further examination because that's the only way of determining on whether or not there was a breach. He also says that the minister himself says that there are many such softwares which can be used by government agencies or external actors for, in fact, violating privacy, and that at least some clarity on whether or not there is any legal way of using Pegasus, the software, the spyware. The question I want to ask is that these are very big concerns here. Can the government afford to be silent on these issues, issues that have been red flagged by none other than the CGI himself? Mr. Hegde, I believe you're on mute. If you can
I'm sorry.
unmute, we'll be able to hear you.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Whether the government can afford it or not, it has chosen this path of absolute stout denial. Yes, there are implicit admissions, but for the moment, it is admitting nothing. It has used national security as some kind of magic phrase which will throw an invisibility cloak over the entire proceedings. That's not how courts work. There is a right to privacy in this country. The law does recognize that the government can at times intercept your messages, but it can do so only with specific authorization in a specific manner. Now,
Sure.
The Pegasus software is not only about authorization. It is, in effect,
Sure.
it controls your device. It can switch on your audio. It can switch on your video. It can use your own device to spy on you. And in addition, every keystroke that you log in is accessible to whoever is operating the system. Now, do we have, in fact, even a legal regime under which all this is possible?
Sure.
I do not believe so. The government has chosen to say that, look, we will have our own expert committee to examine the matter. The expert committee may or may not tell the court something. But as far as the courts are concerned, we are not going to tell you anything except what we choose to tell you, and you must be satisfied with that. Obviously, the court is not going to be satisfied with that. And in addition to some of the eminent people which Vikas has named, there have been the names of judges of the Supreme Court itself who were also supposed to have been surveilled
Sure.
like that. We do need to know whether we are in a surveillance state. If we are in a surveillance state, is there any legal mechanism which has been established under any statute or office order or what?
Right,
All
Mr.
these
Hegde.
things at least need to come to the public domain, and they are certainly not matters of national security. You can't use national security as a
Right.
invisibility cloak. I think the court will definitely
Indeed.
put more pointed questions after it passes its interim order.
Right, Mr. Hegde. In fact, the CGI himself made it very clear that he will be coming out with interim orders in about 2 to 3 times. But what's interesting that even while he was reserving orders, he gave yet another chance to the centre that if the centre has a change of heart, perhaps they should come back to the apex court, should mention the matter, should give some clarity. So again, a last opportunity being given. We're yet to see if the centre responds. But as far as the way forward is concerned, the Solicitor General said that in the spirit of what he calls is transparency, he would want the matter to proceed in the form of an inquiry by a government-appointed panel. That, of course, was met with heavy criticism from the counsels who appeared on the petitioner's side, saying that this will lead to a major credibility crisis. This expert panel will have no credibility if it is appointed by the government itself, since the government is the one that is facing all the accusations. Mr. Hegde, if I can just have a few thoughts from you about the way forward. Does this formula that has been proposed by the centre seem viable, that will help at least in part answer some of these questions that have been raised?
Well, I do expect that whoever the government appoints as its experts on the panel, they will be supplemented by others appointed by the court, either after consulting the petitioners or doing some independent research, so that there is some modicum of independence on that panel. At the end of the day, courts are not technical institutions. They have to rely on their expertise on scientists and technicians. They also have to ensure that those domain experts do a fair job and are not complicit in brushing things under the carpet. It is the credibility of the expert, the credibility of the government, and in the ultimate analysis, the credibility of the courts also, which sometimes come into question.
Sure.
I do expect the
So let me take that
Supreme Court
across.
to modify
Sure.
whatever the government comes up with.
So let me take that across to Mr. Vikas Singh as well. Mr. Vikas Singh, there seems to be an option here that has been presented by the government. Let us appoint the expert panels and let that panel be the one looking at the probe, looking at an inquiry. Is that a viable formula? Will that answer these questions, or will that raise even further questions from here? Mr. Singh, if I may, you're on mute, Mr. Singh.
Well, I feel that if the government itself has to take a call on such an important issue, then we might as well close the courts down. The courts have nothing to do. I mean, everybody who has a problem should go back to the government, and government itself will say, well, I am the judge of what wrong I have done, and I will say, no, whatever has been done is correct. So that should be the end of the matter. Please appreciate that we are looking at privacy issues. We are looking at a fundamental right which has been so declared by the Supreme Court of India in our country. And such privacy issues have been brazenly violated by the government itself. And when a fundamental right is violated by the government itself, can we allow the government itself to say, well, I may have violated, let me look into it and come back and say whether I have violated or not violated. So it's absurd to say that the government should be allowed to form a panel. In fact, I personally feel that it has to be an independent, even if there are technical people, it has to be independent technical people appointed by the Supreme Court itself, either taking the help from the petitioners or by doing whatever inquiry they have to do on their own. But it can't be any government appointed, and especially in a case where the government is not ready to come, fair to the court and file a detailed affidavit denying whether they have actually used the software or not. In fact, as I said in my opening comments, that this actually amounts to, if there is no detailed denial, then the law accepts that to be an admission that you have done it, because that is why you're not denying. So according to me, in such a case of an admitted position of the government having used the software, there is no way that the government can be permitted to do this inquiry itself.
Right, so the government can't be looking at itself as far as this inquiry is concerned. But Mr. Singh, we're running out of time here. Just a brief question. You mentioned at the very outset that perhaps the way forward involves the Justice Local Panel itself that was constituted by the West Bengal government. His integrity is known to be beyond par, to say the very least. He's done a bit of groundwork on the subject, one understands. So is that the best way forward? There's already a committee. Let's task them with this responsibility, Mr. Singh.
Yes, so according to me, Justice Lokur has not only been appointed, but he has also started work. I don't know whether you have seen these full-page advertisements that they have given out asking people to respond. And I'm sure a lot of people must have already responded to whatever he has said. Now, as per the West Bengal, appointment of Justice Lokur, his remit actually starts with the people within West Bengal who may have been, against whose Pegasus software may have been used. So the Supreme Court merely needs to enlarge the scope of the inquiry which has been entrusted to him by the West Bengal government and say that it will be pan-India and he can look at anywhere, anybody in the country who may be subjected to this intrusion. And if that happens, I think that would be, it will speed up things, because he's already started work on that and he's already progressed. So it will definitely, and his integrity, as you rightly said, nobody can doubt. So I think that would be the best way forward in fact, because Supreme Court has also asked the West Bengal in the West Bengal matter,
Right.
for the commission to hold its hands till they decide the matter. So now the opportunity has come for them to say that we are empowering you. Please go ahead, look at the entire angle from all perspectives, and give us a comprehensive report.
Right, Mr. Singh. Right, Mr. Singh, those are interesting suggestions coming in from both of our panelists, Mr. Hegde as well. Mr. Singh, we'd like to thank you for that. And of course, in just a short while from now, the CJI himself said 2 to 3 days is the time that he'll take to come out with some interim orders, and that's perhaps when we can expect more clarity. But thank you once again, gentlemen, for joining us and for sharing your perspective with us. With that, it's time now to head into a very short break, but news and updates will continue on the other side.